Okay, so this is going to be my cooling system video using a 2023 Honda Civic with the 4-cylinder engine, and I'm basically just going to be explaining how everything works and all the different parts and locations. So we're going to start off here. Right here is going to be our water pump. That is a belt-driven water pump with a water pump pulley right here. This will spin the water pump for us. Here we got our rad hoses, upper right here, lower right there. Our thermostat's in here. Got our 2 cooling fans and our radiator obviously right there. Now this pipe, I did want to talk about this. This is going to be our pipe leading directly from the water pump to the back of the thermostat. That's a vital part in our cooling system to make the car run well. Next up, we got our heater hoses. These are going to go to the heater core underneath the dash on the inside of the car. And we got down here, we kind of have our main sort of area where all our hoses and bypass hoses are going. So we have the few going to the heater core. We have a few bypass hoses that are going down into the transmission cooler, which is just over there. It's a little bit hard to see, but it is there. And we also have our coolant temperature sensor tucked in behind there. It's a little bit hard to see. I don't know, I'm gonna try and get a good angle. But anyways, it's just underneath there because this is gonna be the hottest part of our engine once it starts running. And so that's where the coolant temperature sensor is gonna get the best reading. One more thing I wanted to point out is this also runs a thermal fan switch at the bottom of the radiator. Where is it? Yeah, it's right there. So this is basically all the most modern technology. I mean, this car is brand new. And so now that I've gone through all those locations, I kind of just want to explain how it kind of works. Basically, we're going to start with the radiator. So the radiator works through all the coolant. Once it's flown and gone through the engine, it's going to come out through the upper rad hose, and it's going to go down in every little one of these cores within the radiator. Now, while it's doing that, we also have obviously the front grill, which is going to take in air and cool any coolant that's in the radiator. We also have our fans to help us do that. Once it gets to the operating temperature, these fans will turn on and help keep everything cool. The cooling fans would be good, especially when you're saying at idle, when there's no air flowing through the car. The fans are able to generate and just cool the car so it can run while it's idling. Some leak points in our cooling system. There's quite a few. Basically, all those parts that I mentioned before have the potential to leak. When rad hoses get too old, they start to get brittle and really hard, and usually they end up deteriorating from the inside out. Also, these clamps, when they get old, they also can lose their tension, therefore causing leaks at any of these different outlet points. Obviously, we have gaskets. It's like our water pump gasket, thermostat gasket, head gasket. All those can start to leak over time, as well as these tubes and everything. When cars get old, they start to rust, they start to get brittle. Our sensors, everything. These are all different things that can cause leaks within the car. So that's basically an overview of all the different locations and of all the parts and kind of what they do. I still have some questions to answer that I'm gonna do in a second clip. And I will kind of use this car just so I can visually show what can happen regarding those other questions. Okay, now I'm going to start answering some of these questions. I'm going to use the visuals within the engine to try and explain myself better. So here we go. First one, thermostat completely seized shut. So basically what's going to happen is coolant's going to come here through the upper rad hose, flow down, cool off, and it tries to go up here, but it's stuck shut. So no cold coolant is going to be flowing back into the engine, therefore causing the engine to start overheating. That'll be the main thing. From there, you can also get damaged parts on the inside of the engine, because when things get too hot, they can start warping, things can start leaking. It can be a whole mess, cause a ton of different issues. But the main thing that would happen is the car would start overheating. You'd see it on the gauge. If you looked on a scanner, you'd be able to see through the temperature sensor reading. So yeah, that's one thing. If the thermostat was seized slightly open, then you'd get a constant flow of coolant coming into the engine. But because of that, it would take a lot longer for the car to warm up properly. And you might notice your fuel consumption would start to go up because it's trying to heat up as if it was starting cold. Next would be if this thermostat was fully open. Basically, same idea. You'd have all the coolant coming in, but instead of it being blocked off, it would be completely flowing through. So the car would never have the chance to get up to operating temperature, and therefore your car would run cold and you would have no heat. So if you were trying to use the heat on the inside of the car to warm it up, nothing would be working. It'd be blowing cold, just because the constant flow of cold coolant would prevent it from getting up to the right temperature. Now, the last question is going over a Volkswagen plastic water pump. Now, basically what would happen is if the plastic water pump would stop turning, there'd be no coolant flow. There'd be no movement in the coolant. It'd basically be sitting at the bottom of the engine and just sitting still. Because without the water pump pumping the water through all these different components, it's just gonna sit. And if it's not pumping through, then there's no coolant coming in through the rad hoses to cool off. And again, you're gonna be stuck with an overheating issue. And obviously, especially with plastic parts, when they get too hot, they can begin to warp, and that can cause leaks. It can cause things not to run. It would just be a whole mess. But that's a basic explanation of what would happen if the water pump stopped turning. Okay, there's a few more things I'm gonna film in separate clips, but that is my cooling video for the most part, and I'll add anything else that I haven't put in already. Okay, so I'm gonna be doing just a quick explanation about the cooling fan relay. This is actually on a Toyota Matrix that I'm looking at right now. I couldn't find the one on my Civic, so we're gonna go with this one. So basically, it's a pretty basic relay. You got 4 pins. One thing to note out is that 2 of them are bigger and 2 of them are smaller. So these ones, I believe, are gonna be your power and ground terminals on the relay. And then these 2, one's gonna be for your fan and one's gonna be for your ignition. So basically, the relay is gonna power on. It's gonna send the power to the cooling fan, and it'll also turn on once the ignition is switched on. That'll also power the relay. So that's how that works. And if you were to jump the relay or have to bypass it, quick thing you could do is you could just take where it's connected, and people use paper clips and they just connect the 2 sides together. And that should work. That's a good way of quickly checking. You can either use, like people do, a paper clip. Not the best way, but it can be done. Also use a jumper wire. And one more thing that you could also do is if you were to go down and find the connector that goes to the cooling fan. So the connector will be these guys up here. All you would have to do is you could get a jumper wire or a probe, and you could hook it up to a battery or a jumper pack and basically send power directly to the connectors. And theoretically, that should power up your cooling fan. Other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to do a quick explanation on that. And yeah, there we go.